where modular lends value is it imposes discipline, much like integrated project delivery or design build does, where you have to say, listen, we're all on the same side. We want this built environment solution for this price in this amount of time. And how do we all get there?
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Welcome to Construction Genius. I remember as a boy living in Bristol, England, that there were a number of little villages around the city that were made up of modularly constructed houses that were just put up after World War II because the Germans bombed port cities like Bristol and London and places like that. And so modular construction is something that's been around for quite a while, but it's beginning to take more preeminence, not only in places like Japan and Singapore, but also in the United States. My interview today is with Roger Krulak, who is the CEO of Full Stack Modular. They are a modular construction company based out of New York City. And in today's episode, we take a deep dive into the opportunities and the challenges that are associated with modular construction. We talk about the current state of modular, the need for a paradigm shift in how construction projects are conceived, designed, and built, the process of modular and how it improves upon traditional construction processes, and then also the challenges of pitching modular to developers and owners. I think you're going to really enjoy this interview. Roger's extremely engaging. He's got a lot to say, a real passion for modular. And listen to this and take away some key insights into how modular can have an extreme positive impact upon the way buildings are built as we move forward. Roger, thank you so much for joining me here today on the podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Eric. Pleasure to be here today.
In 2016, you said in the New York Times that modular is almost at a tipping point. It's the future. What's your perspective on modular at the moment?
My perspective is that modular is here and it is growing worldwide every day. And even in places like the United States, who is always blamed for being behind sort of technology in the world, FMI did a study at the beginning of this year, and there are basically only 3 states in the entire nation that aren't using prefabrication or off-site construction at some level in the United States.
How do you define modular over at Full Stack Modular?
So I look at a definition of modular, since it's a relatively ill-defined word at this point, along 2 axes. Along the bottom axes, I define the modular based on what is done on site, on the inside, and as it goes along that continuum to what is done off site. So the percentage on site to off site. And then on the vertical axis, I use height. So 0 stories to 45. And that's because as you get buildings that are taller, their systems change, the structural systems change, the shear requirements change, the transportation changes. So to me, everybody that's in the modular business falls somewhere on that graph. And so, for instance, companies like Katerra, who have a panelized system that can't go above 5 stories, they're sort of at the bottom end, which is a huge market, but not really good for dense urban environments, not really good for tall buildings, but it's a huge benefit. As opposed to, say, if you go along that 5-story or 7-story or under solution, which is mostly wood, you get to people like Champion or Gurdon. They do more volumetric work, meaning more work than, say, Katerra is doing off-site, but they still have those height limitations.
Right.
As opposed to, say, for instance, if you go to companies like Prescient out of Colorado, they do a lot of sub-assemblies. They do way more work on site than, say, Full Stack does, but they can go tall as opposed to those 2 guys that I just said. And then if you go as tall as you can and as far off site as you can and go to that apex at the top of the thing. That's what full stack modular does. Fully volumetric solutions, focused on dense urban environments, because that's where the value proposition for that lives.
What do you see the biggest challenge for you as full stack's challenge in terms of where you choose to be on that, the relationship between the height and the production?
To me, the question is, what is it going to take for the modular process to take a greater hold in the built environment in the United States or in New York or wherever it is? And I think that the answer to that question is, it requires a significant paradigm shift from what we're used to. And what we're used to is, and historically what's happened here in the United States for sure, is that somebody, a developer, a city comes up with an idea that says, I want built environment, I want residential housing, I want an office building, whatever it is. They go to an architect, they identify the land, they come up with an idea, then they take that idea and then they give it to a GC or a construction manager who has experience in that local area, and then they price it out. It ends up too expensive. They give it back to the architect, and they go back and forth and back and forth.
Yep.
And at some point, the construction manager, nothing against them, says, screw it, I'm going to tell them any price they want because I'm not going to reprice this again.
Right.
Then they move to the next sign and says, oh, okay, so now we have something we can live with price-wise, and we sort of like the design. Let's go buy it. And then they start this bid process where they go to multiple contractors to get a minimum of 3 prices, who basically, in order to make money in this world, are very skilled at bridging the gap of what they're pricing out versus what they're ultimately going to get paid. Paradigm has been playing out forever. The point of that is that at the end of the day, you have this very drawn out, iterative process by which you're buying a building at a price that you're really never going to be able to build it for, and the process takes forever. Where modular lends value is it imposes discipline, much like integrated project delivery or design build does, where you have to say, listen, we're all on the same side. We want this built environment solution for this price in this amount of time, and how do we all get there? You're saying, okay, guys, we don't have a job until we make sure that we make the costs work, the design work for the end user, and that it's compliant with all of the requirements. It's a much different process. So integrated project delivery drives that, or a design build drives that, and modular by its very nature requires that you enter into a very different process. So that's the paradigm shift that's necessary in order for modular or any sort of efficient process of creating the built environment to take hold.
So we look around the world and we see something, this kind of this kind of process or approach, being something that's predominant or works more or is more common in Europe, in Australia, and particularly in Japan. Yeah. Why do you think it is not as common here in the United States?
Well, I think you'll see that most of those countries have, from a government perspective, leaned in or given incentives to companies that embrace that. So, for instance, Singapore mandates what they call PPVC, prefabricated, prefinished volumetric construction, for anything that they own the land of that they're awarding. Now, they own almost all the land in Singapore, so basically they're driving that very distinctly, and they have several modular companies that are doing a lot of work there. The UK, literally when Theresa May took office, was following up on her predecessor's commitment before the Brexit vote to invest money in companies, either to provide loans or invest money in companies that were willing to build volumetrically because they have a huge housing shortage. And so in Japan, they've done that forever. So what we have now is places in the United States recognizing the value proposition of modular and leaning in as government. So for instance... So
let me just interrupt you there real quick. So it sounds like if this is something that's going to be adopted in the United States, it's going to be driven by the owners of the land, by the government, and by the developers. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that in the developer's mind, even though they take tremendous risk all the time, they're risks that they're very familiar with.
Right.
So now you're asking them to take risks that they're not familiar with. And that makes the banks nervous. It makes everyone. By the way, to be fair, and I have to say this, if you ask any developer how many jobs that they've done in the last 15 years have come in on time and on budget, they're going to tell you zero.
Right.
So that they're not. So they're risk averse for, like it's the enemy that you know or something like that.
Yeah. It's the devil you know as opposed to the devil
you know. Exactly. The devil that you know. So in order to feel a little bit of comfort in adopting that, the government can play a huge role in incenting people.
I see.
To do that. So, like I said, New York City has recently come out with a request for expression of interest, which we were just designated for this week, to do an affordable project in the Rockaways, which HPD, the Affordable Housing Fund that exists in New York City is funding. And they agreed, because it's modular, to fund it about a year and a half earlier than they would otherwise.
I see.
They're not spending any more money, but they're moving that money to an allocation to try to push the modular efficiency. And they've also put out an RFP for a piece of land that they own for a competition. So they're doing that. And if you go across the country to the other side, the mayor of San Francisco has said that he wants a modular factory in San Francisco to deal with the fact that they can't build enough housing there, no matter what they do. What I'm trying to say is that just like I believe that a design build or people on the same side can better and more efficiently create a process, when you have government cooperation, it adds to that efficiency.
Looking at the way that full stack modular, the way you present your offering to your clients and your process, how would you describe the nature of your process in terms of the design build perspective? Yeah.
So we provide what we call a design, manufacture, construct solution, turnkey. Sit with us and a team, generally an architect of record, the engineers that we work with, the developer, and a general contractor. And we provide a complete solution for a target cost in a target time frame, and that's it. No back and forth. I mean, we will do an iterative process, but it's going to be together so we can say, look, here, we're actually moving in the right direction or we're not moving in the right direction, rather than have to get a design after it's completely cooked that the developer falls in love with but can't be built for anything but double the cost.
What are the biggest challenges with pitching that process, the design to build process, to the owners that you interact with?
Well, the one that I previously mentioned, which is that it's different than what they're used to. But more important than anything is you sort of have to commit to this before you call your friend the architect to do a drawing for a building and fall in love with it. Historically, you call your architect friend, they do some design, which is not a design. It's a pretty picture that has no engineering, no anything. And you're already off to the wrong process. So we need to get involved day one where somebody says, look, I'd love to do this, and I'd love to do it modularly if it works. And let's sit down with an architect and figure out a game plan. That's the hardest thing, to get us involved at the beginning. That's the hardest process.
Okay.
If that happens, things work pretty well.
You guys have a factory there in the Brooklyn Navy Yards, correct?
Yep.
Are you a general contractor?
Yeah, great question. So we are modular manufacturers. Working in conjunction with GCs or CMs to provide a complete solution.
You sit in the space between the owner and the GC?
We sit generally in basically toe-to-toe with the GC.
Okay.
I think we're providing 90% of the work or 85% of the work. So we're not a sub, we are together a prime. That's basically how it works.
Together a prime. Interesting. You have your own field folks on site delivering your product, or how does that work?
No, the GC's scope is they do excavation and foundation to whatever floor that we're building conventionally.
Right. They
deal with the crane and the stacking of the modules. The mate line work, which is all those connection pieces that we do in site. So they manage those trades. Although it's a very simple process, we send all of the pieces from the factory. And obviously the mods are everything. They're the stairwells and the elevator shafts and the hallways and the units and the facade. And so they do all those connection pieces, SMEP, and then final roof and elevator. That's their scope.
Okay.
That's what they do. And we do everything else.
What do you find that the challenges are in the modular world in terms of working with organized labor and their concerns with their reduction in workforce and things like that?
Yeah, so great question. So we here at Full Stack decided to become a signatory to the building trades.
How interesting.
Yeah, but we have a collective bargaining agreement that changes a lot of things about the unions so that we can work with them, as they would say, as brothers.
Sure.
But our much like if you were a cabinet shop or an electrical fixture manufacturer, we have the same kind of relationship where we have a modular division of the building trades in New York, and those people work in our factory. So.
What are the biggest misconceptions that people have about modular and offsite construction and the process that you execute?
So the biggest misconceptions are sometimes that they think that the quality is inferior because it's definitively superior. And you're building in a controlled environment in an ergonomic fashion. You don't have plumbers climbing through walls or a confined space. You're doing it in a very controlled space. So everything we build is plumb and square, tested. Everything we do is tested. So unlike a building inspector, we literally have to have a third-party inspector and ourselves sign off on everything we do. The other misconception is the presumption that you can sort of do a design and then modularize it. Like you just take a design and then, we can just cut it up into 100 different pieces and it'll work fine, because that doesn't work very effectively.
Okay.
You need to really do it from the beginning. So that's a big misconception. One of the other misconceptions is that for some reason we comply with some different building code. We don't. We comply with current building codes, current requirements,
So that's where that mind shift has to come in terms of understanding the quality of what you do, understanding the process, because it has to be designed from the ground up, so to speak,
Yep.
and then understanding how it fits into the regulations and the code. What kind of sparked your interest in the modular approach to construction?
So let me see if I can make this happen. So if you see behind me right over here.
Yeah, who's that?
Right there, so that's my great-grandfather.
No way.
Joseph.
Oh,
Joseph was a carpenter, and Joseph was born in Russia and moved to Detroit. He trained my grandfather Nate to be a carpenter, and so I grew up in a family on one side that were developers, on the other side that were very active carpenters. And my grandfather worked as an executive in the latter part of his life, and he was very involved with a project called Project Breakthrough. And Project Breakthrough was an initiative that the government came up with during the Carter administration, I believe, that basically was meant to create concrete modular buildings for independent living facilities, along the lines of Section 8 in the same sort of affordability. So he, in conjunction with their partners, created a factory in Akron, Ohio, that built about 35,000 units around the United States modularly. And then Starrett in New York and another company out west did the same thing. There's actually a woman writing a book on Project Breakthrough right now because it was a fascinating effort. Anyway, so carpentry and wasting time, or not wasting time the way I look at it, and sort of rethinking the way things are done is in my blood.
You have that background of both the developer and the carpenter, so the field and the office, so to speak. Yeah. What about that approach has benefited you the most as you've gotten into modular?
Yeah, great question. From a construction perspective, there's a lot of efficiency in the process in which the idea of moving the construction process, or as one of my good friends says, the parade of trades, as
Right.
opposed to manufacturing, which is literally the next most efficient thing to do. Shifting there from a contractor standpoint is completely logical. The other issue from a developer's perspective is what's interesting to the developer. Like, they don't care how you organize it. They want to know, how do I get what I want? What's the price and how long is it going to take?
Right.
So what the combination of my experience has done is to say, what product are we really offering at the end of the day? Because offering a 70 or 80% done bunch of mods that sort of go to some general contractor who you have to be a subcontractor to just doesn't have a lot of legs, right? To the developer, it just doesn't have a lot of legs. It just creates a lot of risk in their mind.
Right.
So to me, our offering, the reason it is a design, manufacture, construct solution is, at the end of the day, they want to know how they're getting the building, how much it's going to cost, and when are we going to get it.
Right.
And so, although they're interested in the idea that manufacturing is, a little bit more efficient than construction, that's not really where their focus is. So those two things have helped me balance.
You and I were chatting just before, and folks like Buckmaster Fuller and Frank Lloyd Wright, they put a lot of energy, and obviously your grandfather and the Project Breakthrough have put a lot of energy into this modular thing, and yet it is still. It feels to someone like me, who reads a lot about the construction industry, it feels right from a quality, safety, and efficiency perspective, and yet it's not there from an acceptance perspective.
Yeah. What I can tell you from my own experience is that when I bought this from Forest City, and of course everybody was excited about it, the people we were talking to were basically pioneers, right? Like, I'm a guy, I develop like 4 buildings a year, and I want to do something different, and you're different, so I want to do that. So but now we're talking to the big players in the market, like the biggest players in the market. So in my mind, once they're focused on it, that's already happened, right? So we're working on several, very large, solutions for the major players in the New York, well, basically on the East Coast market. And companies like Marriott, who have, sort of committed to modular solutions, and companies like Citizen M. So you're seeing that adoption that is more prevalent, frankly, every day.
If you could sum up your pitch to them in terms of why modular, what are 3 things that you consistently communicate in terms of the why?
Yeah. So modular as a whole, I'll give you, and then I'll give you sort of full stacks.
There you go. I'd love to hear that.
So the modular as a whole, our solution, our fully volumetric, is 80% offsite. So think of all the lack of disruption that creates for even the neighbors, let alone the city and traffic and all those things. We are time and cost predictable. No construction site is ever time and cost predictable, but in a manufacturing site, you can be.
Right.
We're incredibly safe. All the work we're doing is no more than 30 inches above the ground, almost ever.
Right.
We have almost no construction waste, so we can get as sustainable as you like, and it doesn't really cost anymore. Some material, sometimes maybe a little more labor, but it's not a major cost differential. So you could build a passive building if you want. You can build a living building if you want. It's not a problem for us because our processes are really more about manufacturing than trade-focused divisions of labor, et cetera. So we have a minimum of 70% fewer workers on site. So no congestion, much safer, lower workers' comp rates, et cetera, so on and so forth. And you can get to market at minimum of 25% faster. So you're in the same, potentially the same cycle that when you started to do the development, which is a huge benefit, right? So because normally you do a development in this cycle, and then who knows what it's going to be like 4 years from now. We are different in many ways. We are made in America. That's our modular solutions right here in downtown Brooklyn, as you mentioned.
Yep.
We can build in a non-seismic area. We can build up to 45 stories and up to 65 in a tower configuration, which is very tall. We use BIM technology and all of the associated systems that we've created around those to drive our production process from the model or the as-built in which we're building the building. So the building's built exactly like it's designed because that we create production drawings out of it. So it's not a design, one of 9 trades interpreting
Yes.
the building however they want in order to make it work, which causes field conditions and other
Yes.
things. So we don't do that. We build drawings, so the building is going to be exactly as it's figured on an actual model.
So there's safety, there's quality, there's delivery. All of those aspects are encompassed in the modular approach.
Exactly.
So then if I'm a developer and I'm thinking about the modular approach and I'm doing some research, and for instance, we come across the Forest City project, for instance.
Yep.
That was one where the hype on the modular was really big, but then at least from an outsider's perspective, and that's how I'm speaking, the delivery wasn't quite there. So, speak to that in terms of that mindset shift that you're looking for, and why was it that Forest City wasn't a modular home run, so to speak?
Yeah. So a couple of things. They say the proof is in the pudding.
Just before you get there, tell the audience specifically what the Forest Hill project was for those who are outside of New York.
461 Dean Street, which is currently, at least for a short time more, the tallest modular building in the world.
Right.
And it is 363,000 square feet. It's half affordable. It's 32 stories tall. It's adjacent to the Brooklyn Nets arena.
Yep.
And it had 1,000 mods. So the good news is that the building was done in 2016, finished. And it sold this year at a 4.5 cap, which is an incredibly good rate.
Uh-huh.
It's 100% occupied.
Uh-huh.
And the current management company, Greystar, is very happy with the way it operates. And we tested the facade, we tested the sound, and it's still performing incredibly well. The solution that we had created performs very well. Let's talk about the delay. First of all, Forest City, in their vision and willingness to do R&D, came up with a way to build a tall modular building, which really, before that, there'd only been one, and it had been done in England, and it was a sort of one-and-done solution at a university. So we came up with a way to build what we thought was an efficient, process-driven solution for high-rise buildings, which was very good. And then Forest City, who had their eyes towards becoming a REIT, said, look, we don't want to be in a new business. We want to sell our businesses, so we should find a partner. They found Skanska, who had purported, at least in Europe, to have some modular experience, and they formed a joint venture to open the factory.
I see.
Now you have a construction manager whose job is to blame somebody else for everything that's not going right and manage it. No, I mean, that's their job. And a developer who, again, just wants a lump sum guaranteed maximum price for what they're doing because they know their performance depends on it.
Yeah.
Now, these two companies, as fantastic as they both are at what they do, basically were trying to do a startup. And so they got married and went into the process of building the building. And again, when you do a startup and when you're in a factory, you have to solve all of your own problems. And they didn't find a good way to do that.
Right.
As a result of that, while they were sort of figuring out how to manufacture a tall modular building using things that really aren't done that much in regular buildings or even short modular buildings, which is metrology, knowing all the dimensions are correct and knowing all those things that really make a modular solution work, they had to figure it out. The result was that the process made some mistakes in that sort of metrology. Uh-huh. And Skanska got nervous. They closed down the factory, and then they started what is still sort of a contractor developer fight, not we're in a startup together, how do we fix the problem fight.
That goes back again to that whole the mindset shift that you're talking about.
Exactly.
And so it was tough for the contractor or the CM, Skanska, to with the risks involved and the challenges, to have that mindset shift. You're at the point where you had a decision to make in terms of your next steps. You want to describe that for the audience a little bit? I
was working for Forest City. Skanska had closed the factory, gotten rid of all the workers. And the question was, we had a building that had 10 stories. It was sitting vacant. Nothing happened for about 7 months. Finally, Forest City decided that they were going to buy out Skanska and finish the building.
Right.
So I came in with another guy named Roger, who was a manufacturing expert, and we started up the factory again and finished the building quite successfully. And it worked great. Again, solving all the problems rather than trying to figure out who to blame. The good news for Full Stack is that, toward the end of that building, Forest City decided that they were actually becoming a REIT, and they wanted to get rid of that business, which is when I went and raised money and bought it from Forest City.
What was it about your vision and your conviction that kept you moving through all of that stuff and kept you pushing towards where you are now?
Yeah. Look, the industry needs change.
Yep.
I mean, so let's talk about the issues that are at hand.
Yeah.
The first issue that's at hand is, if you talk about housing alone, the world is close to 2 billion housing units short.
Wow.
Okay. Construction productivity has not really had any production improvements in about 20 years. Manufacturing has almost a fourfold improvement. That's the first thing. The second thing is that construction is 13.5% of the world's economy, right? It's a massive impact on economic wealth.
Yep.
The percentage of jobs, as I mentioned earlier, that are on time in our budget are less than 5%. And it's some crazy number like that. So that doesn't work. And then more important, if you take all that together and say, I could overcome all those things, the reality is that skilled labor is almost non-existent anymore. So you have almost no skilled labor.
Yep.
And, in the U.S., you have almost 3.8% unemployment. So traditionally, sort of those, what I call sort of the gilded trade idea, you apprentice with something, you learn how to do something, you master your skills, you work under people, you can perform those skills. And those trades are the people who provide those skills, and then you become a member of that trade, et cetera. Well, in all honesty, there's just not enough of that going around. There was an article the other day about how kids under 10 have no fine motor skills. So you're asking these people to be like craftsmen.
Yeah.
Okay? And frankly, it's much easier to build something high quality in a manufactured environment where you have a quality assurance process that is ensuring adherence to an intelligent process, rather than hoping that, your mason knows how to lay brick and do mortars.
You're describing the problem accurately. The solution is a manufacturing mindset as opposed to a craftsman or a construction site mindset.
Yeah.
How long do you think it's going to take to where the whole industry shifts and that manufacturing mindset is insisted upon? How long?
I think necessity is the mother of invention. The things that I just described to you, it's already happening. It may not be fully volumetric modular solutions are good for several things, but not for a whole lot of other things. But the reality is that no matter what you're doing in the United States, somebody's prefabricating something.
Yes.
Like, I have a friend who's an huge electrical contractor. He just bought a factory in Jersey so he could punch down his panels so that he could build mechanical head walls.
Yep.
There's another company I know in Seattle that uses multi-trade rack systems. Everybody's thinking about how do we create efficiencies in this inefficient process.
Right.
And so my answer to your question is, it's already happening, because if it doesn't, it's not going to work. And by the way, right now the economy is really good. When it's not, somehow everybody's going to have to figure out how to survive.
So that's the thing. So because you think about how modular was popular after World War II, because like in England, everyone got their houses bombed, so they need somewhere to live. So modular construction, nice and fast. So it's interesting to think about how these boom times actually play against the development of modular in a certain way, because everyone's so fat and happy at the moment.
Exactly. So who cares? Just spend as much money as you want, and Exactly.
So it's interesting to think about the kind of crisis or the kind of circumstantial shift that will be a tipping point. What do you think that might be? Would it be simply an economic one, or what do you think it would be?
Well, I think it's already there. Forget the world. New York. I mean, we're 400. The mayor hoped to produce 300,000 affordable units.
Right.
I think he's done 30 or 40 maybe in the last like 6 years. Not that he's not trying, he is trying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, they're come on, like, what are you gonna do? Like, you have to do something. That's driving. Like, the solutions that exist today are not anywhere near adequate. So without a shift, you just stay behind. Like, the world doesn't operate that way, right? I'll give you some examples. So, for instance, the hospital systems, a lot of the hospital systems are adopting with their standard modular design, say, for their exam rooms, for their, ADA toilet rooms, for their, operating rooms, et cetera. And they have created production models for all of those, and they have multiple providers. If they're approved, they can actually provide exactly what it is that the hospital wants. So they have adopted a manufacturing mentality in that process. So I do believe that you are going to start to see developers, especially in independent living or affordable housing, all this stuff, or co-living. Co-living is a huge opportunity for that. This is what we want to do, and this is how we're going to do it. Like, we've eliminated so many of the hotels. The reason they're trying to adopt it, like, they have a flag, they want it to look a certain way. Like, just have a production drawing that allows you to do it. And in essence, you could potentially have several manufacturers that could manufacture as long as they're compliant with what it is that you're doing.
What are 3 necessary steps that need to occur in the next 2 to 5 years for the modular manufacturing mindset to continue to grow and to take precedence?
The first thing is that developers think about it as a first step. They want, they at least consider it in their, I want to create something that has value, whatever that is. Our world is multifamily, but whatever that is, that's the first thing. The second thing is we have to make, because they're also stakeholders, we have to make the financial institutions, the people who are funding the debt side of this, very comfortable with what we're doing. And that requires a little bit of work, and we work on it every day, and we're making headway, a lot of it. But that needs, you need to get to a point where that's done. That's the second thing. Yep. And then the third thing is a sort of a local authority education of the benefits for them, not for the end developers, but for them on a modular solution, and the costs for them associated with that. For instance, you have a 100,000-foot building, let's just say, and if you build it conventionally, it's probably a 24-month build. You have people in that location, streets closed, garbage coming out, concrete trucks, all this stuff for 2 years probably. And so they give you the half a block that's near that site to close down, which is, everybody who's ever lived in New York or been in a big city knows exactly what that looks like. Right. And they're all grimacing because they know what I'm talking about. Yep. And so if you do a modular solution, the 100,000-foot building is 400 mods or 350 mods. We can stack, say, 15 a day. So literally in 1 month, from finished foundation till that building stacked up, facade on and everything, it's done. So instead of 2 years, you have your foundation built, say 6 months or so, then you stack the building in a month. So 7 months in, you've got a stacked building. Now, it's not completely finished, but now you need no more deliveries because all the mods have everything in them you need. The only other deliveries that are going to happen are elevator, finished roof, and rooftop equipment. So you need more space to do that stacking. You need to figure out a way to get what are normally wide loads there. So you need a little bit more cooperation from the Department of Transportation in the short run, and in the long run, huge benefit to the community.
They've got to be willing to have that mindset shift.
Exactly.
In terms of this big block of mod building coming in.
For a month.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So it sounds like what your job is you're an educator.
That's 50% of my time.
Yeah. So you're educating developers, you're educating financial institutions, and then local authorities.
Yep.
Okay. That's excellent.
I'm hoping to get tenure on that pretty soon. So I have
With that in mind, what would you want your personal legacy to be? Let's say, I don't know how many more years you got left in the gig here, but, let's say you got 20 more years, right?
Yeah.
What would you want your personal legacy to be as you come to the end of your career?
That the modular process for the dense urban environment has fundamentally changed the expectations for creating the built environment worldwide, not just here in the United States, and that we've embraced manufacturing in the construction process for the good of all. That's really where I see things happening and going, and it really is the imprimatur that I would love to sort of walk away from this industry with.
Do you think as new generations of people come into the industry, isn't part of your job too is getting into the universities and the school systems and communicating this mindset so that when people come out of college, they're thinking as manufacturers as opposed to construction workers?
Yeah, I mean, I've taught a class at Columbia as a guest lecturer. I was at Harvard Graduate School of Design last week.
That's beautiful.
I've been to MIT, the World Real Estate Forum. So the answer is I do it all the time, and it's really important. I love the interface and conversations because they do think about everything from architectural agency to, like, how does this happen and what happens with automation? And it's pretty fascinating.
So in that sense, the problem of the new generation not wanting to roll up their sleeves and get dirty could actually be a long-term benefit for you because the manufacturing method would be much more appealing to them.
I think it is. Yeah. I think they're pretty excited about it.
That's excellent. I always like to wrap up my interviews with a personal question. And don't worry, it's not uncomfortable. What is your favorite restaurant?
One of my favorite restaurants in New York is Dell'Anima. And if you've never gone there, you ought to.
Okay, and when you go to Dell'Anima, what should you get?
Oh, you pretty much can't go wrong there. It's a fantastic chef, very creative, great vibe, phenomenal food, open kitchen, not a big place, which I like. I like a little bit more intimate and constant. I'm a bit of a foodie, so constant food energy. It's great stuff.
That's beautiful. Roger, I really appreciate your time and your insights here today, and thank you for joining me here on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.